Mike, thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate your taking the time. What I'd like to do today first is to find out a little bit more about what your organization does and what you try to do to help trucking, very briefly.
Yeah, very good. I lead the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. It's a nonprofit startup. We're unbiased, but we're comprehensive about how we look at technologies, and our whole goal is to accelerate the adoption of things like low rolling resistance tires, aerodynamics, powertrain technologies, to get better fuel economy and save money for the fleets.
That's a great place to start. This year, what do you think has been the first or second or third most important advancement in fuel efficiency?
So this has been a year of continued uptake of some things like low rolling resistance tires and aerodynamics, moving from maybe these things on like 20 or 30% of the trucks to 40, 50, 60% of the trucks. It's been also a year of the tipping point for other things like automated manual transmissions. So it's been a year where many technologies continued to ramp. Others struggling a little bit. 6x2 axles, for instance, is a technology that we did a report on, and we think has a bright future, but remains at 2, 3, 4% of the new truck production. Trailers, the aerodynamics of trailers, some things have ramped, others are leveling off. I think that might have some things to do with fuel pricing and some other pieces, but
let's get back to that fuel pricing in a moment. What do you think are the reasons that people are adopting more of the AMTs and some of the low rolling resistance tires? Why is this happening?
Cost of ownership. I mean, this business is run by cents per mile, dollars per mile. So, you have to have a payback of buying a new technology, or you just won't do it. Now, there's always other factors that come into the equation around whether you buy something or not, but it starts with, is it going to pay for itself or not? So the continuation of these technologies proving that they make sense for the fleets is why they continue to be bought.
So then, taking that in the other direction, in the inverse, does that suggest that these technologies that they're not adopting aren't cost efficient?
Well, cost efficient in the total sense. So, maybe they have a maintenance cost that's higher than the fuel savings, or maybe they help or hurt attracting drivers or maintaining drivers in their fleet. They could have other adverse consequences. So when I say cost, it's not just the cost of the technology when they buy the truck and the fuel savings, but it's all the rest of it. And that's what we try to add value in with our truckingefficiency.org website, tech guide and other pieces of work that we do, is really get that.
And that's terrific. It still doesn't quite get me to the point where I understand, and a technology that's not being widely used that you folks seem to feel has value. Why is it not being used?
So there's always risk and change avoidance. So all of these have challenges to get into the marketplace, and for fleets to say, yep, that makes total sense for me. I oftentimes hear, well, I see why that might work for somebody else, but it doesn't work for me, and so they're reluctant. So I think there is a reluctance for change that we all have in ourselves that can cause. So in some ways, what we do is kind of try to bust all of those reluctance or all of those reasons why they don't buy them, if they really are truly delivering to how you started that, where you said, for those ones that really NACFE and Trucking Efficiency believes there's a payback, why do they still not buy them?
Well, let's clarify something here though, Mike. Do you actually recommend to people that they adopt certain new technology, or do you just show the costs and benefits and the bigger picture?
Yes, we do. We do not get into recommending individual manufacturers of the technologies, but we definitely do on the technologies. We use a matrix that says, to what level do we think there's a payback on this technology, short or later, shorter the better from a financial standpoint, and then we show to what level of information, how much information is available for the fleet to make that decision. So if it's a newer technology, there may not be that much information. But what we find often in our work is that we conclude it has a quick payback, and there's a lot of data and a lot of information about it, those are the ones that we would recommend and say, fleets, you should buy this or at least be testing it and looking at it because it has a payback for you.
Okay, all good. Let's talk a little bit about 2016. Instead of looking back in the mirror, let's look out into the future, into the crystal ball. Tell me a little bit about what you see is coming this year.
A couple things.
Year.
Yeah, a couple things impacting our work going into 2016 is a second year of low fuel prices. So, you know, we benefit as an industry by paying less for fuel. It's a huge operating cost. It's a good thing. It does push out the payback calculation of these technologies. And so it requires that the manufacturers continue to work hard to make these technologies the most cost effective, get their upfront price down, their performance up, quality improved, you know, availability of them so that they will still make sense. And we all kind of think price of fuel is going to go back up. So that's one. A second thing I think about is 2016 will be the year where we solidify the second phase of greenhouse gas regulations for commercial trucks. And the proposed rulemaking came last summer, comment period has been this fall, and now the agencies will figure out what that will be. And that will be important because that will set in place a stringency of new truck and trailer production from really Class 2B all the way to Class 8. We focus mostly on over-the-road Class 8 for the next 10, 12 years.
Okay. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I'm going to anyway. Looking out a few years, is this rule a rule that's really going to make a big difference in this industry, or is this a rule that is going to be like some previous emissions rules where the manufacturers have already sort of adjusted to what was expected and the hurdle that they had to climb was not very high?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think the you know, phase one rule might be considered what you're suggesting there but you know, regulating commercial vehicles is a huge challenge. I mean, everything, you know, keep in mind that regulation, you know, deals with garbage trucks and, you know, ambulances and all these sort of trucks with a huge amount of variation. So the first round was about, let's figure out what makes sense. How is it regulated? Engines versus vehicles, chassis, bodies, all that sort of thing. GEM model, all that got in place. And so now phase two, I think what we're seeing is then, you know, that expectation of increasing fuel economy over, you know, steps in the regulation between now and 2027 that you know, in reality will make a difference here. You know, I won't comment on whether I believe in regulations or not, but fact of it is that you know, they are here, and I think they help to bring all players, whether they're the component manufacturers, the fleets, the truck builders, into the game a little more firmly.
Those are two important changes. What other ones do you see on the horizon?
In 2016?
In 16, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you know, the continued concern for the industry about drivers, about maintenance technicians, talent across the business, whether it's at the major manufacturers and so forth, is a challenge for the business as soon as here in 2016. With you know, all the challenges that we have in trucking, I think so. That's another one. And then I also think I was going to go to autonomous trucks, and we can still get there.
We're going to get to them later. Let's look at these various features that you just mentioned. Tell us all how your organization can address issues such as drivers, address issues such as demographics.
So I think us being so unbiased and comprehensive in our work allows us to interview, and what we do with all of our reports and all of our efforts is we go interview all the stakeholders around these technologies. So we talk with fleets, we talk with owner-operators, we talk with small and medium-sized fleets. So that's like the end users. We talk with shippers, we talk with the truck and trailer manufacturers, component manufacturers, and then even other people like EPA SmartWay, other folks that are interested in trucking, dealers. And we try to get that total perspective. So what you see from us and what we, you know, work hard to do is to get all that perspective and bring that into aggregation.
Okay. So going back to the demographics, how would you go into a fleet and say, I'm bringing you information in our reports that are going to help you deal with the changing demographics? What are the features that you could show to a fleet that say, here, for example, will low rolling resistance tires help to make drivers more content?
So, the fleets have a lot to deal with. So what we're trying to do is help. Some people recently said that you're trying to get the ball, you're trying top spin on the ball. You're trying to get things started. So if we can help them, look at tires and not aero, if that's where they need to look, or where they want to look. So what's their low-hanging fruit? So we want to help them do that. So then when they have the opportunity to meet with the manufacturers of those, they're a lot smarter about the technologies. They let's just use tires. They understand. They've read our report. They've looked at our findings of the benefits and the consequences of, say, wide base versus duals versus non-LR, low rolling resistance tires. They're much more educated and have a way then to go talk with the manufacturers, because we don't buy and sell any of these products. To make the difference in fuel economy that we're talking about and freight efficiency, they have to ultimately buy something from somebody to make that change, and that's our role.
Speaking of money, how much do your reports cost?
Oh, everything's free. Thanks for asking. It's all public domain and free. And we do that through sponsorship by many organizations that believe that the work we're doing is important. So, some people ask me, well, if it's free, it's not worth anything. I would challenge you to go take a look, and we're happy to be able to do that. Not so sure where the long term is, but anything I talk about today is publicly available.
Fair enough. Speaking of reports, how often do they come out, and what's the next one we can look for?
Very good. We isolated 70 technologies for tractors and trailers that are currently available. Some have been available longer than others. We're in a series of confidence reports on all 70. In the middle of December, we'll be publishing one on maintenance and how the maintenance and fuel economy react together. And then throughout early in the year, we'll be addressing tractor aerodynamics, trailer aerodynamics, how you test trucks for fuel economy, low viscosity lubricants, and that builds on reports that we've put out in the last year and a half on tires and lightweighting and transmissions and axles, et cetera.
Fantastic. For those of us who don't know, what's a confidence report?
So I love the term confidence report. It came out of some detailed work we were doing, and a technology confidence report answers the question for fleets: what confidence should I have in a particular technology? And so we called them confidence reports, and I think they're pretty self-descriptive. And they aren't going to always lead a fleet to go write a check and pay for something, but it definitely gets them thinking about it, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be comprehensive, and when you go to one of our confidence reports, we expect that we will have identified all the benefits of buying a technology, all the consequences of buying a technology, and we share some best practices. So we talk to a fleet. They've already done this. What did they learn, and how did they apply it the best way?
Okay. So, and you have these for each of the 70 features that you've been studying, correct?
Well, we have a good bit of them today, and by the middle of 2016, we'll have work done on all 70.
Okay. And once those confidences are in place, do they stay there forever?
They do, and we are beginning a cadence of updating them.
Okay.
So we identify, for instance, who some of the manufacturers are. Over time, those manufacturers will come and go. The new technologies will come out that will change what we found in the report. So if a company comes out and has an innovation that cuts the cost in half and doubles its fuel economy, that's important that we get that into those confidence reports. So very bluntly, we've been so dedicated to getting all the technologies a report, that now it's time to go refresh them all, and we're working on the priority of how we would do which ones as we move forward.
Fantastic. I've got a couple of other questions, but before we get to them, there's been a lot of discussion about how 2016 could be a year that is one where the rates are not going to be increasing as quickly, but there's still going to be pressure on fleets to pay more for drivers to retain them to recruit them. The economy is kind of an open-ended question right now. Some think it's going to just be a slow kind of a progression, like it's been slogging along, as someone's put it. So in this environment, can you quickly make the case for why companies should be assessing the investments in what you're analyzing? So, you know, at a time when their pennies or per mile may not be 10 cents like they used to be, might be 5.
Right, let's put it this way. In the A-Tree study of a year ago, fuel economy and a few of those things were up as high as, I think, number 3 of the top 10. And in this past report, they've fallen out. So, you know, there's reason for fleets to be paying attention to other things. You know, this is a very cyclical market. You know, freight goes up and down, truck production, you know, all of that. So I get all of that. You know, for us, you know, we want to help the industry be successful. We think fuel cost and being able to fill these trailers up with as much freight as possible to get the most ton mile per gallon or cubic freight per mile per gallon is an important thing no matter what. And so I also believe that some of these technologies have other benefits, of course. They attract drivers, they have safety benefits, they can have other benefits that are you know, outside. So you can't really just pay attention to fuel. It's part of a bigger picture.
But there is the question, are they going to be more able to afford to invest next year?
Well, we're saving a lot of money on fuel, right? I mean, you know, even with our passenger cars, you know, the number's $700 and $800 a family per year and less gasoline for our cars.
Okay.
So, you know, trucking companies are benefiting from lower fuel prices, and you know, investing in fuel economy technologies is a good place to put that money. There's other places to put that money as well.
Good stuff. I'd like to wrap up here with try to give me quick 1, 2, 3, 4 word answers. Let's start with driverless vehicles.
I think driverless vehicles is something that can happen in 20, 30 years.
Good or bad?
Good.
Good if some have them and some don't?
I think they can mix together. I think over that 20 or 30 years, we're going to see that. I think there's a whole bunch of incremental steps to there.
Okay. Driverless trucks in particular. Good, bad, indifferent?
Sure. I mean, I'm an engineer, and I look at the technologies that are being delivered, and I think we can do that. You know, we can stay away from things. We can manage the long, lonely highways without drivers in the trucks. Now, I'm not naive in saying that this is going to happen tomorrow, but I think if we're thinking 20, 30 years down the road, and our ability to, you know, think of a small, you know, we've done so much work on efficiency. We could use a 100 horsepower engine can haul some of these trailers across the country. So maybe it's a little engine buried in a trailer, and there's no tractor at all.
Okay, that's a little more than 4 words, but we're getting somewhere. This is good. Tell me about platooning.
So I think platooning is exactly one of those incremental steps.
Okay.
So we're automating the trucks. Think automated manual transmissions instead of manuals. That's an automation. So I think another automation is to be able to fix the distance between 2 tractor trailers and benefit from that drafting.
Okay.
Huge fuel savings.
Okay. One of the things that if you talk to a fleet, they spend a huge amount of their time talking about drivers, because they would typically be 5 or 6 of them for every other employee at a well-run truckload carrier. And they talk a lot about a new truck cost, which is forever escalating. Nobody thinks as much about trailers. Tell me about trailers. Is the rectangular trailers still the shape of the future?
I should get at least as many words in my answer as you get in your question. But,
okay, well, we're almost even now. We're almost even.
Trailers are, you know, their design of being cubic is real helpful to put in pallets and boxes, right? But you know, trailers have been a bit of a commodity, and we can't afford to do that any longer. The fuel savings due to aerodynamics on trailers, making sure tires on trailers are inflated. I mean, I think we haven't worried about that. Okay, if you lose air in a tire, so what on a trailer? I mean, and so I think that there's trailers are coming. Now, I don't think it's rocket science. It's still there's no engine in it. There's no this, that, and the other. So we can do it, but it's not the commodity that I think we've allowed it to be over the years.
Are we going to see trailers in the future that look like rocket ships, streamlined?
I think as long as we've got the 53-foot length, and we've built our bridges and our roads at 13.6, that'll be a square rectangular. Because we still want to get the most freight in that hauling that we can. And so, people ask me about teardrop trailers and this, that, or the other. I think the infrastructure is the case where we're better off adding aerodynamics to the box.
Fair enough. And this one doesn't have to be even a 100-word answer. It can be a one-word answer if you choose. Last question. Let's talk about, everyone in Washington has been obsessed with a highway bill and $305 billion in spending over multiple years. Have you looked at the current highway bill, and what does that deliver for fuel efficiency, if anything?
No, I haven't to a great extent. What I would say is that a lot of big opportunities come with integration. So, how the trucks work with the roads and the bridges and so forth. It also comes at a big risk, because if you plan on a certain thing happening in one area, say infrastructure, and it doesn't happen, and you've got it on the trucks, think maybe natural gas, right? If you don't have the fueling stations, but you got the trucks, you don't have freight movement, right? So the same thing could be with longer combination vehicles, either having the infrastructure for it or the trucks for it and not the infrastructure. So I think rail, intermodal, how it works with trucking. So I think there's big opportunities in the margins, but you can't rely on the margins to be successful. And that's actually why autonomous trucks are coming out. Let's don't worry about putting lines in the road. Let's let the truck see the road that already exists and operate within it.
And see the potholes or the bridges that aren't in great shape, et cetera. Okay, I should ask you one other thing. I'm allowed, I get to ask the questions, and it's this. What didn't we talk about that you think is important in a very brief time?
Well, then I would say, I think the work we do is important. So truckingefficiency.org is a great place to go to.
Okay.
And I think the industry can benefit from that. We do workshops, we do our reports. Join us. There's no cost to do that. We're looking for the collaboration. So if you've got ideas, give us a call. Now, how that fits in the whole scheme, I think that the greenhouse gas regulations are going to happen.
Okay.
And we need to figure that out together. It will have benefits in fuel savings and total cost of ownership savings if we do it right.
Okay.
And so I think attention to that's important going into 2016, 17, and beyond.
Sounds super. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.